Okay, so we started with statistics in previous class and we discussed how to form a frequency curve or frequency distribution. We discussed what is normal distribution. We also discussed what is skewness, kurtosis, and then we also discussed probabilities. Now we are moving on to, so we discussed some simple probabilities, but we did not talk about probability distribution, that how is probability distributed like we discussed for frequency. So now we are moving on to probability distributions, that how is probability distributed and what are the common probability distribution. So when we talk about common probability distribution, remember that it can be classified into two major categories: discrete and continuous. Discrete means having discrete values, like for example if I toss a coin will either give me head or tail. So there are two outcomes, discrete outcomes, either first outcome which is head or second outcome which is tail. So this is a discrete probability. Or if let's say I repeat this experiment 10 times, then those would be 10 discrete times, first time, second time, third, fourth. I cannot say 1.5 time, 1.25 time. It will be discrete outcome 1 2 3 4 5 6 whatever. Similarly, if I have a dice and it has 1 2 3 4 5 6 on it, then there will be discrete outcomes, first outcome, second outcome, third outcome, fourth outcome. That means discrete distribution is the one in which outcomes are discrete in nature. For example, 10 times doing head and tail experiment, so there will be 10 outcomes, 10 discrete outcomes. If I ask you what is the probability of first outcome, you can measure it. If I ask you that it was repeated again, what is the probability of second outcome, you can measure it, and third outcome, and so on. And if you add up the probabilities of all those outcomes, that should give you the answer as 1. So if you add up probabilities of all the outcomes, that should sum up to 1 in discrete probability distribution. Continuous is the one in which something is continuously changing. So for example, if there is a stock price, the stock price is going up, going down, going up, going down. So if I ask you what is the probability of stock price, let's say being 10.256. Let's say this is 10, this is 10.256, this is let's say 10.5, this is 9.5, and so on. So if I ask you what is the probability of stock price being 10.256, it will be difficult to calculate. Why? Because this is just an instance and there are many instances throughout there. You cannot quantify them in discrete items. You cannot say that there are 10 outcomes, 15 outcomes. This is a continuous change, so there is a continuous change, so there are umpteen number of outcomes. There can be hundreds of thousands of outcomes within this range. There will be one stock price here, then another, then another, then another, and it will keep on changing. So that means it is a continuous distribution in which you cannot quantify the number of outcomes. You can have a range. You can say that stock price is ranging from 10 to, let's say for example, whatever it is, 10.5. So you can have a range, that, or 9.5 to 10.5. So you can have a range, but you cannot tell the probability of a specific point because it is continuously changing. But you would know the range, what is the maximum and what is the minimum. Within that it will continuously change. So the probability of whole range will be 1, but you cannot quantify the number of outcomes. So this is known as continuous distribution. Now moving on, one key point to remember is that in discrete distribution you can identify, you can estimate the probability of each outcome because outcome is visible. But in continuous you cannot calculate probability of one outcome. So if I ask you what is that stock price will range from 10 to 11, what is the probability of a stock price being 10.2567? So you cannot calculate it. Why? Because it is such a small instance that its probability will be very low, almost negligible. So remember, in continuous distribution, probability of any specific point is 0. So if I ask you what is the probability of 10.2567, you will say 0. What is the probability of 10.9? You will say 0, because it is such a small instance in continuous change that its probability is almost 0. So in continuous distribution, probability can be calculated for a range. You can have a probability for price being 10 to 10.25. This is a sizable outcome, so you can have a probability for this, but probability for one point will be so less that it is taken as 0. Yes. So in continuous distribution, you calculate the probability or estimate the probability for a range. In discrete, you estimate the probability for one outcome. So moving on with discrete random variable. So one of the key types of distributions is binomial distribution. What is binomial distribution? Binomial distribution is the one in which there are two outcomes, either success or failure. So for example, if I am tossing a coin which have head and tail on it, then let's say for me success is head. I have decided that head is the winner or head is the success. So either it can be head or tail. It cannot be a head and tail together. So that means either it will be a success or a failure. Then if I toss it again I will either have a success or a failure. If I toss it again a success or a failure. Or let's say that I have a dice. On that dice I have numbers from or digits from 1 to 6. So there is a dice with digits from 1 to 6. And I tell you that I will win if number on the dice is either 1 or 2. So that means success for me is either 1 or 2. So probability for 1 or 2 happening would be 2 divided by 6. 1 divided by 6 for 1 and 1 divided by 6 for 2. So these two are my desired outcomes and total number of outcomes are 6. So 2 divided by 6 is my probability. So that means my probability of success in this dice is 1 divided by 3. If I say that my success is 1, 2, 3, 4, then my probability for success would be 4 divided by 6. So that means there will either be a success or a failure with any event or with any experiment. If I roll it again either success or a failure. So in binomial you either have a success or a failure. This binomial distribution is used when you have two outcomes, success and failure, and when you are repeating outcomes a number of times. So for example, if I tell you that I have 6 numbers on a dice and 2 of them are my wins. So what is the probability? Probability for win is 1 divided by 3. 2 divided by 6, 1 divided by 3, 0.33. Now if I tell you that I repeat this experiment 10 times, what is the probability of success? So I repeat this 10 times. What is the probability of success in this 10 times? So what is the probability of success? Simply each time there is 0.33 probability, so probability of success is 0.33. That is simple. But if then I ask you that what is the probability that I am successful at least 6 times? That is, I am successful at least 6 times out of these 10 times experiment. So how do you calculate it? So for calculating such a probability, you use a formula for binomial, which is NCR p to the power r q to the power n minus r. In your curriculum, this q would be written as 1 minus p. So p is your probability for success, q will be your probability for failure. So q is simply 1 minus p. So you write it 1 minus p or you write it q. Same thing in curriculum, it is given as 1 minus p. So that means if I do NCR p to the power r q to the power n minus r, that will give me the probability of success in at least 6 of these experiments. What is n? N is the total number of experiment. For example, 10. What is r? R is the desired number of success outcomes, which is 6. P is probability of success, which is 0.33. R is 6 again. Q is 1 minus P, which is 0.67. And N minus R is 10 minus 6, which is 4. So this will tell you the probability of being successful in at least 6 of the 10 outcomes. So this is how we use binomial to calculate probabilities. So this is how you calculate probability. Now if I ask you that what is the expected value or expected value of success, then expected value is simply n into p. That is, this experiment is being repeated. Sorry, this I want to find out success for 6 times. So 6 multiplied by probability of success, which is 0.33. This will be my expected value, or total from this 10 times, the total number of outcomes in which I expect to be successful. So remember this formula and expected value, which is NP, and let's do a question over it. Okay. Yes, NCR. And one more thing, variance. If you are asked about variance of expected success or expected value, then it is NPQ. So if you multiply n into p into q, that will be variance. Simply expected value multiplied by q is your variance. So on your calculator, you first press 10, then you press second and NCR. NCR is on the top of addition button. So second NCR, then you press 6 and then you press equal to, and it will be 210. So this is how you do it on your calculator. 10, then NCR, shift NCR and 6 and equal to. 10 shift NCR 6 equal to. And for 0.33 to the power 6, you first write 0.33. Then there is an option on your calculator which is y to the power x. Then you press y to the power x. And then you press 6. And then you press equal to. So it will give you 0.33 to the power 6. 0.000729. Sorry, 0.00129. 2914. So expected value is simply n into p. So this will tell you that overall from this experiment, what is your overall probability of success. So simply what you do is you have the number of outcomes for which you are measuring probability. So you want to be successful at least 6 times. So what is the chances of being successful at least 6 times? That will be found through expected value. So what you do is you want to be successful 6 times, and what is the probability of success itself? It is 0.33. So you want to have 6 times 0.33 at least. This is your expected value. And if you want to calculate variance in this expected value, that how much would it vary or what is the dispersion in this expected value, then dispersion can simply be found by multiplying expected value with chance of it not happening, which is 0.67. N is, yeah, N over here would be R. It would be, no, it should be 10. It should be 10. It is 10. Okay, so N total number of times is 10. It should be 10. Sorry. It shouldn't be 6. It should be. So total number of outcomes are 10. So it should be 10 into 0.33. 0.33 into 10. So total number of outcomes into your probability of success, which is 3.3. So expected value is that you may win 3.3 times, and if you want to check the variance, you multiply it by Q, which is 0.67. So N into P and N into P into Q. NCR NC 6 210 multiplied by 0.33 to the power 6 multiplied by 0.67 to the power 4. Its answer is approximately 0.054. So, that would be due to decimal rounding. So this is discrete. So here, if you look at this example, if you add up the probabilities of all the discrete outcomes, it should sum up to 1. So this is the cumulative probability, sorry, this is the probability. So if you add up all the probabilities, that should come up to 1, because it covers all the possible outcomes, and probability, total probability of all the possible outcomes happening is 1 or 100%. So here is another example. Over the last 10 years, a company's annual earnings increased year over year 7 times and decreased year over year 3 times. You increase 7 times, decrease 3 times. You decide to model the number of earnings increases for the next decade as a binomial random variable. What is your estimate of the probability of success? So what is success for you? They have told you that it is defined as increase in earning. So increase is success for you, and number of times that you had an increase was 7. That means success happened 7 times, and total number of outcomes was 10. That means out of 10 times, 7 times you were successful. So probability of success is 7 divided by 10. If you are defining success as the degrees, then probability of success will be 3 divided by 10. So it depends how you define success. So they have told you that it is defined as increase, not decrease. What is the probability that earnings will increase in exactly 5 of the next 10 years? So now they have asked you that what is the probability that your earnings will increase in exactly 5 of the next 10 years. So what is the probability that you will win 5 times? Oh, sorry, you will be successful 5 times. So probability is NCR P to the power R Q to the power N minus R. So N is your total number of outcomes. C, R is your uh, what is the probability it will increase exactly 5. So 5. P is 0.7 to the power R, and Q to the power, Q will be 0.3, 1 minus 0.7 is 0.3 to the power 10 minus 5, which is 5. But in this case these are same, but they wouldn't always be same. It is R and it is N minus R. These two are not the same numbers. So simply you do it and you get your answer. Calculate the expected number of yearly earnings increases during the next 10 years. So expected value. So expected value for how long? For 10 experiments or 10 years. So simply for 10 years it will be 10 multiplied by probability of success, NP, 10 into 0.7, which is 7. Calculate the variance and standard deviation of number of yearly earning. So simply what is the formula for variance? NP Q. So N is 10, P is 0.7 and Q is 0.3, which makes up 2.1. So as long as you know the formula, this should be very simple and straightforward. Shouldn't be a science as long as you know the formula. So key is to know these 3 formulas and being able to apply it. So whenever you are targeting something, you have a benchmark, you have an expectation or benchmark. So for example, if you are managing a portfolio, that portfolio will have some benchmark. Let's say your benchmark is Karachi Stock Exchange index, and there will be some actual return. So there will be some benchmark which you are following, and there will be some actual return which you are making. So remember, the difference between benchmark return and actual return is known as tracking objective. Sorry, tracking error. Tracking error is the difference in these returns. So what you are doing, you are tracking some benchmark. So the difference between your return and that benchmark's return is known as tracking error. That is due to difference in sample, that is due to difference in decision, maybe timing of decision or any other thing. So the difference between these two return, benchmark return and actual return, is tracking error. For now, just remember it. This will be used later when we do shortfall risk. For now, just remember this terminology. The actual minus benchmark return is tracking error. Remember this terminology. Okay, so we did binomial, we just did binomial distribution, and in binomial distribution we have discrete outcomes, and based on that we can have a probability for success or probability for failure. Now we will move on to continuous. In continuous we discussed that you are asked, if you are asked about the probability of a specific instance, it will always be 0. Why 0? Because it is so less or so small that it is negligible, so it is 0. So in continuous distribution, you can only have a probability for a range. You can never have a probability for 1 point. One probability for 1 point will specifically be 0. And probability for whole range, in which you have minimum and maximum, probability for whole range will be 1. Any problem so far? Okay, so like for example, if you have a normal distribution curve, in this normal distribution curve, let's say that you have values from -2 to +2. Now if I ask you what is the probability for 1.36, which is here, the probability for 1.36 will be 0. Why? Because this is one single point. Probability can be taken for a range. If I ask you what is the probability for 1.9, it will be 0. If I ask you what is the probability for -1.5, it will be 0. Why? Because probability in this continuous distribution can only be taken uh, for a range, or can only be estimated for a range. What is the probability in frequency distribution curve? So remember, the probability in frequency distribution curve is area under the graph. This area is known as probability. So if I asked you what is the probability of x being within the range of, let's say, 1.1 and 1.9, then you will take 1.1. You will take 1.1, let's say it lies here. You will take 1.9 and you will calculate the area under the curve within this range. This area will be the probability. And the total area under the curve should be equal to 1. Why? Because total probability is 1. So moving on with an example of a continuous distribution. So here is an example. You are forecasting sales for a company in the fourth quarter of its fiscal year. Your low end estimate of sales is 14 million. So this is your low end, let's say here. Either it can be as minimum as 14 million, and your high end estimate is 15 million. So which means that sales will lie within 14 and 15. So the total probability between 14 and 15 should be 1, because this covers everything. If I ask you what is the probability of 14.5, that will be 0. You decide to treat all outcomes for sales between two variables as equally likely. Equally likely means that each outcome has the same frequency or same probability, which means if I draw a frequency line, all should have the same frequency. That's why I have a straight line. Otherwise, if some have higher frequency, some have lower frequency, then it will be a curve. But here they have told you that each outcome is equally likely, so you have a straight line. Using a continuous uniform distribution, what is the expected value? So what is the expected value? Simply speaking, expected value is the mean, like we did in last class. So what is the mean? If you have a curve, so what is the mean? Mean is simply the average. So if I know that all observations have same frequency, simply I can take minimum, add maximum, divided by 2. So average of these two will be my mean, 14.5 million. So my expected value is 14.5 million, which is mean of 14 and 15. Any problem so far? Now if you are asked what is the probability of having this expected value, it is 0. Why? Because it is just a 1 point. Probability has to be for a range in continuous distribution. And so it takes us to next question, which says what is the probability that sales are less than equal to 14.125 million. 14.125 125. Let's say this is 14.125 million. So what is the probability of sale being within this range? It should be the area of this graph or area of this curve. Now the question is that how do you find out this area? So this is a rectangle. So area of rectangle is length into breadth. So, length into height or length into breadth. So what is the breadth? Breadth is 14.125 minus 14. So this is 14.125. This is 14. So breadth is 14.125 minus 14. So you have breadth which is 0.125, but you do not have length. So that means in order to find out this probability or this area, you need length as well. So how do you find out length? For calculating this length or this height, you take the bigger rectangle. Why? Because height will be same no matter if I take half of the rectangle or if I take whole of the rectangle. Height for rectangle will remain be the same. So I have to find out this height. So what I do is that I select this rectangle. Now in this rectangle, it ranges from 14 to 15, which means breadth is 1 million and total area is, what is the total area of this rectangle? What should be the total area? Area under the graph is probability. Area should be 1 because area is the probability. So that means if I cover whole rectangle, then its area should be 1. So this means if I take up the formula again, L into B is equals to area, then length is to be found, breadth is 1 and area is 1, which means height comes out to be 1. So I plug it in here, 1 into 0.125 and I get the answer 12.5%. That means probability of sales being less than equal to 14.125% is 12.5%, which is this area. So remember, probability is simply area under the graph for continuous distribution. Or if I simply have to take it, transform it into formula, formula will be 1 divided by b minus 1 for fx. So for your height, what for your height? So formula for height would be 1 total area divided by length. Length is b minus a, maximum minus minimum. So for a uniform distribution like this, in which you have a straight line, in which each item has equal representation, height for this rectangle would be 1 divided by b minus a. And once you have height, you just multiply it by length, which is in this case 14.125 minus 14, and you get your answer for probability. So remember the concept that it is the area. As long as you know the concept, you should be able to recall this formula. Otherwise, there are chances that you can forget the formula in the end. So this height is 1 divided by b minus a. This is 1 divided by b minus, and concept is total area is 1. So height will be 1 divided by breadth. Breadth is b minus a. So height will be 1 divided by b minus a. This is the frequency. So frequency is 1 divided by b minus a. So this is continuous uniform distribution. We had discussed normal distribution in last class already, and we discussed that it has a skewness of 0 and kurtosis of 3. Confidence interval we will discuss shortly. Moving on to standard normal distribution. So what is normal distribution? We discussed that normal distribution is that distribution in which right hand side is the mirror image of left hand side is the mirror image of right hand side. And we discussed in this distribution skewness is 0 and kurtosis is 3. So maybe there is a data set and I tell you that this is normally distributed. It will have some mean. For example, it has a mean of 5% and it will have some standard deviation. let's say standard deviation is, for example, 7%. So I tell you that it has mean of 5% and standard deviation of 7%, and it is normally distributed. It will have this shape. Mean will be in center 5% and standard deviation will be 7%. If I tell you there is another data set which has a mean of 10% and a standard deviation of 15%, and it is also normally distributed, again it will have same shape, but only difference is now you have mean as 10% and a standard deviation as 15%. So that means all the normal distributions, no matter what mean or standard deviation they have, if it is a normal distribution, it will have same shape. Normal distribution is shape. But now the problem is that if I ask you that what is the probability of this in this distribution, let's say taking this as example, this is the data set, what is the probability that x will be less than 5%, which means x will be lesser than equal to 5%. So what is the probability for this region, which means area of this graph or area of this region. So if you have to calculate area of this graph, it wouldn't be possible for you to calculate it until and unless you have a table for it. So if I give you a table in which I mention that what is the area at the back of 5%, what is the area at the back of 4.52, you cannot find it. But if I give you a table, you can find it. For example, it lies here and you can just tell me the probability or area. So that means in order for you to find probability or area, you need to have that frequency distribution table with you, which gives you area under the graph. So obviously this table will be different for this distribution because it has mean of 10%. So values will be around 10%. This would have a different table. That means each distribution will have a different table, and which is not practically possible. That is, every time you will have to make a new table, or you will have to use that particular table. So in order to simplify that, what we do is that we use a standard normal distribution and we make its table. So what is a standard normal distribution? A standard normal distribution is that normal distribution in which mean is 0 and standard deviation is 1. So if I take a normal distribution for which mean is 0, standard deviation is 1, that is known as a standard normal distribution. And then what I do is that I make a table for this standard normal distribution. So I have a table available for this standard normal distribution, and the variable, this standard normal variable is known as Z. Z is the symbol for standard normal variable. Like here you have X, Z is specifically used for standard normal variable. So now what I can do is that I have a standard normal distribution table, which means I can find out areas for standard normal distribution. But my distribution is not standard normal. It is normal but not standard normal. So what I can do is that I can convert it into a standard normal and then do my calculation using the table, which means that I can first convert X into Z, and then I can find out the probabilities or areas, whatever I want to find from this particular table, which means after converting X into Z, I will be able to use this table, and no matter what distribution I have, I can convert it into Z if it is a normal distribution. I can convert this X into Z, I can convert this X into Z. How do we do this? So for example, this is your normal distribution in which you have X. This is the distribution for X, and it has a 5% mean, and it has standard deviation of, let's say, whatever it is, 8% or whatever. And I have Z. For Z, I again have for Z I have 0% and 1% standard deviation. So this is Z, this is X. Both are normal. So I know both have exactly the same shape because normal has one shape. So I want to find out the probability of X being lesser than 2.5%. That means I want to find out this area. But I do not have its table, but I have the table of Z. So this area will be the same as this area. So if I draw a line here on Z distribution, area on the left of this would be the same as area on the left of X, because both are exactly the same shape. Only this value is different. This is 2.5, this will be something else. But area will be same. That means area on the left hand side of this Z will be the same as area on the left hand side of X. So if I have to find out area on the left hand side of 2.5, I can find out area on the left hand side of this Z from standard normal table. So that means can be easily done. So but for that I will need to convert this 2.5 into Z. This 2.5 will need to be converted into Z. And how do you convert it? So Z value is equal to X minus X bar divided by standard deviation. So what I do is I take the difference of mean, which is 2.5 minus 5, and divided by standard deviation, 8%, 0.08. So if I do this 2.5 minus 5, it comes out to be minus 0.3125%. So that means this Z value is minus 0.3125%. So now if from standard normal table I find out the value of on the left of 0.3125%, that will be the same as area on the left of 2.5%. So this is how you convert X into Z for finding out probabilities related to X, because you have table available for Z and not for X. So you first convert it into Z and then you find out the area. So how do we actually do this? This we have done. Okay, so let's do this example. Assume the portfolio mean return is 12%. So this is the portfolio, it has a mean return of 12%. And the standard deviation is 22%. Standard deviation 22%. You want to calculate probability assuming that a normal distribution describes return. This is a normal distribution. What is the probability that portfolio return will exceed 20%? This is 12%. 20% is maybe here. So they are asking you about the probability that return will exceed 20%. That means it will be on the right hand side of 20%. So they are asking you about this area. This area is the probability. Any confusion so far? Okay. So what is the probability? This area. How do you find this out? You need table, but you do not have table for this X. So if you do not have table for this X, what do? You convert it into Z value. So what is the value? 20%. You want to find out area on the right hand side of 20%. So how do you do this? You find out the adjacent Z value. That what is this? Z value. So what is this Z value? You use the formula which is X minus X bar. X bar is 12, which is at the center, divided by 22. And when I do this, my answer will be 0.36. Which means this value of Z is 0.36. So area on the right hand side of 20% will be the same as area on the right hand side of 0.36% for Z. Any confusion so far up till here? Okay, so what do we do next? Next is that I find out the area on the right hand side of 0.36 from the table. So how do you find that out? Simply you take first decimal place from vertical, you take second decimal place from horizontal, and you find out the area. But a key point to remember is that when you are finding out this area, these numbers are the areas, but they give you the area on the left hand side. So all these areas are the areas on the left hand side. So if I go here, this is the area 0.36, but this is the area on the left hand side. So if left hand side area is 0.6406, what should be the area on right hand side? Total area is 1. So if area on left is 0.6406, area on right will be 1 minus 0.6406. That will come out to be your area or probability. So this is just to have your concepts clear. Once we move on, then we will go into questions and all that. But this is just to in this reading they're just clarifying concept. Its application will come into next into 12th reading, which is hypothesis testing. There it will be, this will be applied in that particular reading. But here this is just to explain you or have your concepts built before you go into hypothesis testing. Another question is, what is the probability that portfolio return will be between 12% and 20%? So area on the right hand side of 20% was 1 minus 0.6406, which is 36%. So this is 36% of area approximately, right? So this is 36% of area approximately. And so what is the what do you have to find? You have to find out area between 12 and 20. So if you have to find out area between 12 and 20%, the area between 12 and 20% will be total area minus this area minus this area. So total is 1. 1 minus this area is 1 minus 0.36. So you get 0.64, which is the this whole area. Let's say A and B. Now you also have to remove A. A is exactly the half of the figure because A is at the mean. 12% is the mean. So if it is at the mean, it will have 50% on left, 50% on right. So this A area or this area will be 50%. So I subtract that as well. And then I arrive at B, which is 1 minus 0.86, 0.1414%. So if your concept is clear, you should be able to find out any area, any probability of any value being less than, greater than, equal to, within a range or whatsoever. Should be able to find all the probabilities for all the areas. So this is about standard normal distribution. So remember, standard normal distribution is that distribution in which mean is 0. Is that normal distribution in which mean is 0 and standard deviation is 1. And the standard normal variable is Z. Z is the symbol for standard normal variable. Moving on, multivariate distributions. So just an introduction to our concept. What is multivariate distribution? So simply speaking, if I have one data set, it will have a distribution. Let's say this is the distribution. I have another data set, it will have a distribution. I have another, it will have a distribution. If I combine multiple distributions and form one distribution, after combining multiple distributions, that one distribution being formed is known as multivariate distribution. So it is formed by combining more than one distributions or multiple distributions. So if you combine multiple distributions and you form a new distribution, that is known as multivariate distribution, in which there will be multiple distributions. Okay, so moving on. So we have discussed probability. We discussed that you can easily find out probability of something being greater than a specific percentage. You can find out the probability of something being less than a specific percentage or whatever. Building on that, there is a terminology which is known as shortfall risk. Shortfall risk is the probability or possibility of falling below your benchmark return. So when you are managing the portfolio, when you are doing investment, there will be certain benchmark that you are targeting. If that benchmark is minimum required return, if that benchmark is minimum required return, or if you have any minimum required return on a portfolio, then the possibility of or the risk of falling below that minimum return is known as shortfall risk. So shortfall risk is falling short of your minimum requirement. This is shortfall risk. So remember the terminology shortfall risk. So how do you measure it? You can measure the probability of falling below that minimum return. That will be your shortfall risk. Or another way is that you use safety first criteria. That is another way of ranking projects with respect to shortfall risk. Safety first criteria. Tracking error is difference of return. So for example, if I have a portfolio, my actual return on portfolio is 15%, my benchmark return is 10%. The difference is known as tracking error. 15 minus 10 is 5%. This is tracking error, the difference of return. On the other hand, let's say I have this portfolio 15% and I say that I require a minimum return of 10% on it. So the risk or the possibility of failing to generate even 10% return is the shortfall risk. So in shortfall risk, I will not be concerned about what I am making. I will more be concerned about, am I reaching this minimum required or not? If I am reaching this minimum required return, then shortfall risk is lower. If I am unable to, so it is the risk that I might not be able to even generate minimum return. So it is that risk. One of the measures can be that you simply estimate the probability, which is shortfall risk. Another way can be that you use a formula which is known as, or a method which is known as safety first criteria. So what is safety first criteria? So safety first criteria is the one in which you rank the project based on safety first ratio. And safety first ratio is simply expected return minus least required return or minimum required return divided by standard deviation. So it tells you how much excess return are you making with respect to standard deviation. In Sharpe ratio, you have expected return minus risk-free return. Here you have least required return. So risk-free return can be your least required return. If least required return is the risk-free return, then this will be also be known as Sharpe ratio. So Sharpe ratio will be that safety first ratio in which least required return is risk-free return. But maybe you have a higher least required return. पहले देखेंगे मतलब sorry. So depending on what you are analyzing. So if you are analyzing risk of shortfall, then you will go for safety first ratio because you are concerned that whether you are meeting this least required return or not. If you are analyzing the performance of a portfolio manager or performance of a portfolio, you will go for Sharpe ratio because your concern is how much excess return are you making instead of covering the least required return. So both are similar, but application would be different. If you are analyzing performance, Sharpe ratio. If you are analyzing riskiness of generating least required return, then safety first ratio. And obviously you will select the portfolio with highest safety first ratio. Like in Sharpe ratio, you select the portfolio with highest Sharpe ratio, you select the portfolio with highest safety first ratio. So remember key differences: in Sharpe ratio you have risk-free rate, in safety first ratio you have least required. Both can be same as well, but at the same time both can be different as well. So here is again an example. You are researching asset allocations for a client with an $800,000 portfolio. Although her investment objective is long-term growth, at the end of a year she may want to liquidate $30,000. So that means she is investing 800,000. From that 800,000 she will need 30,000 in first year for anything. If that need arises, she would like to be able to take out 30,000 without invading capital. Without invading initial capital means that she do not want to take it out of initial capital. She want to generate enough return that even if she takes it out, total capital remains be at least 800,000. And these are the alternatives that she have. Given the desire of not to invade 800,000 principal, what is the shortfall level? Shortfall level would mean your minimum required return, that how much return should it at least make in order not to invade this capital. So in year 1 she want to liquidate 30,000 and she does not want this 800 to decrease. So that means she want to generate at least 30,000 of return. So that means her least required return is 30,000 divided by 800,000, 3.75%. So you can say her minimum required level is 830,000, or you can say her minimum required return is 3.75%. This is the minimum level that she is targeting. According to safety first criteria, which of the three allocation is best? So which one is best? Obviously the one with the highest safety ratio, safety first ratio is the best. So which one has the highest safety first ratio? Simply speaking, your least required return is 3.75. Expected return from A is 25. So 25 minus 3.75 divided by 27. This is safety first ratio for A. For B, it will be 11 minus 3.75 divided by 8. And for C, it will be 14 minus 3.75 divided by 20. So whatever has the highest answer, that should be the choice of this investor. So if you calculated, what are the answers? Is 0.787, 0.787, 0.90625, and 0.5125. So within these, B has the highest safety first ratio, so B should be the choice of portfolio. So that means B would have least amount of risk with respect to falling below the least required return. And then they say, what is the probability that return on safety first optimal portfolio will be less than shortfall level? So this is your safety first portfolio. It has a mean of 11% and a standard deviation of 8%. And they are asking you, what is the probability that return will be lesser than shortfall level? Shortfall level is 3.75%. So they are asking you the probability on the area on the left hand side of 3.75. That is probability of return being lesser than 3.75%. So this area is to be found, and how do you find it? Simply you convert it into z value. When you convert it into z value, it will be 3.75 minus 11 divided by 8 minus 0.90625, and then you find it out through table. On the table you can find out the area on the left hand side of 0.90625, and that will be your answer. So okay, so minus means on the left hand side. So for example, how do I do this? 0.90625. So how will I do this? So I know that the area on the left hand side of 90625 should be area on the right hand side of positive 0.90625. Why? Because both are mirror images. So from the table I can find out this whole area which is on the left hand side of 0.90625, and then when I subtract it from 1, I will get this area. This area will be the same as this area. So you will have to do it a bit conceptually, so there cannot be one straight way to doing it. So in every question you will have to think around it, that how do you find out that particular area. Concept is you have to find out area. In order to find out area, you need to first convert it into standard normal variable, which is z. That is the key underlying concept. Okay, so we discussed discrete, then we discussed continuous. In continuous, we discussed normal distribution, we discussed standard normal distribution, we discussed shortfall risk. There is another type of distribution known as log normal distribution. So if instead of plotting normal distribution, plotting normal distribution, if I plot log normal, if I plot exponential function of that particular distribution, that is known as log normal distribution. So what do I mean by this? So for example, if I have 2 here, if I plot 2 and its frequency, that will be normal distribution. If instead of that I plot e to the power 2, that will be log normal distribution. And what is the key use of log normal distribution or key feature of log normal distribution? Log normal distribution will be bounded by 0. It can never be negative. So even if you take e to the power minus 2, it will give you a positive number. So it cannot be negative. So log normal distribution is never negative. It will be 0, bounded by 0, while normal distribution can be negative. Can have, yeah. So key benefit is that log normal distribution is used to make distribution for asset prices. Why? Because a price of an asset can never be negative. So that means the application is that it is used for modeling asset prices. While return can be negative. Return can either be positive or negative. Price can never be negative. So that's why it is used for modeling asset prices. There are other applications as well in regression models and all that will come in level 2. But for now, remember this application. This is important and the reason for this application. So that is normal distribution or log normal distribution. Let's say that I have a stock. I'm performing valuation of that stock. So in order to find out valuation, I will have some distribution of values. So value can be less, value can be higher depending on my assumption. If I change assumption, value will be high. If I change assumption, value will be low. There will be some distribution of stock returns. Return can be positive, can be negative, or value can be positive or higher or can be lower. So that means value can be modeled using this any distribution, or will have some distribution. Let's say normal distribution or whatever. Now this value, how do I know that what is the distribution for value? There can be 2 ways. Multiple ways, but we are discussing 2. One is Monte Carlo and other is historical. Of finding this distribution for stock value or stock return, whatever it is, whatever the variable is. Let's say it is value of stock. So value of stock can be high, can be low. Sometimes it may go up, sometimes it may go down. So I am trying to find out the distribution, that is frequency curve, that what are the chances of value being 100, what are the chances for value being 110, what are the chances for value being 115 or greater than number or less than number. So how do I find out distribution? That how is the distribution? I can look at the historical data. I can look at past 50 years of data, 25 years of data, or 10 years of data, and I can plot it. When I plot it, I will get a distribution. Simply like we did in previous class, in which we made a frequency curve. How did we make a frequency curve? We had past year returns data and we just plotted it, and so we got frequency curve. So I can plot it in the same way using historical data, and that will be it. If I plot the distribution or come up with the distribution using historical data, that is known as historical simulation or distribution based on historical data. What is the advantage? It is simple. I have the data available, I just plot it and I get the distribution. Key advantage. Another advantage, it is actual data. This is something that has happened in the past. So it is actual data. It is not something that I am bringing out from myself or bringing up from myself. It is something that has actually happened. So another advantage. What is the disadvantage? What has happened in past might not happen in future. Future is not the best reflective of past. Past may be the future may be different from past. So that is a disadvantage. So key advantages: simple to use, easy to use, based on actual data. And key disadvantage is that future might not be the same as past. There may be difference in future and past. Another type is Monte Carlo. So for example, I come up with the value of $100. This $100 will be based on some assumptions. Let's say my sales growth assumption is 10% CAGR for future. Let's say my profitability assumption is that GM will be 45%. Let's say my discount rate assumption is, or risk-free rate assumption is, that risk-free rate or discount rate, whatever is, will be 8%. If any of these assumptions change, value will change. So what I can do is I can come up with random scenarios. This can be one scenario. I can come up with another random value for sale, 12%, another random value for GM, 44%, another random value for risk-free rate. This will be second scenario. Then I can again generate a random number for sales, random number for profitability, random number for risk-free rate. That will be third scenario, and so on. So I can keep on coming up with scenarios, and I can come up with 100 scenarios. I can come up with 1000 scenarios, or I can come up with 100,000 scenarios, or as many scenarios as I want to. So I can keep on generating sales values, I can keep on generating profitability and risk-free rate, and I can come up with hundreds and thousands of scenarios. Based on those hundreds and thousands of scenarios, I will accumulate a data of value, and that will be hundreds and thousands of values. So maybe first it comes out to be 100, then it comes 101, then it comes 99, then it comes 105, then it comes 95. So I will have a data set in which I will have hundreds and thousands of values. Then if I plot it on a frequency curve, that is known as Monte Carlo simulation. So Monte Carlo simulation is a statistical method. Remember, a statistical method in which you form hundreds and thousands of scenarios or too many scenarios, and based on that you arrive at the simulation or distribution. So it is a statistical method. Key advantage: you can have hundreds and thousands of scenarios, and so it will cover everything. So coverage is very good, and so it might be accurate as well. Disadvantage: it is a statistical method. It does not have any reasoning attached to it. So you do not have a reasoning or rationale attached to it. It is based on random numbers. Key disadvantages: a statistical method, random based on random numbers. Second, very complex and require a lot of computations and some computer software will also be required, like Excel or whatever, or some level of programming. So statistical method, complex, not based on actual data. So it does not account for actual data at all, but only for statistical data. So these are the disadvantages or advantages. Advantages, that it covers almost everything. So coverage is very high. Covers almost all the scenarios. So this is Monte Carlo and historical simulation. So Monte Carlo computer-based technique. Applications include financial planning, developing VAR estimate to value complex securities. Again, what is VAR? Nothing to be discussed here. It will be discussed in level 2 in detail. Repeated generation of one or more risk factors. User gives inputs, model calculate probabilities. Based on that, it makes up outputs, and then based on that, it comes up with the distribution of a simulated asset values. And then based on that, you can find out the mean value or variance or probability of any specific value. Historical Monte Carlo simulation is complex. Answers will only be accurate if assumptions are accurate. Answers will only be accurate if right model is used. If your model is in itself problematic or have issues, then value that you are driving will also be incorrect. not an analytic method but a statistical one. So it is a statistical method, not analytic. Cannot provide insights that analytic methods can. Why? Because you are only basing it on random numbers, no, not analyzing trend, not analyzing any other factor. Historical, we have discussed, limitations cannot account for effect of significant events that did not occur during the sample period. So as we said, future will not be the same as past. Maybe there is something which may come up in future but might not happen in past, so that wouldn't be a part of your data set. Cannot perform what if analysis. uh, Based on actual data, you know what happened, and based on that what happened, you know it, but you cannot come up with new scenarios that what will happen if this happens or what will happen if that happens. Source of data is fixed, and we cannot investigate effects of changing parameters in certain ways. Like in Monte Carlo, you were changing the parameters and so value was changing. Here this is a fixed set, you cannot change the parameters because this is actual data which exists or actual events which have already happened. So this is about Monte Carlo or historical simulation or log normal distribution or normal distribution. So all these are common probability distributions, common distributions which are used in probabilities. And this brings us to the end of this reading.